We have a people with lived experience round table. I'm going to move on to the Toronto Drug Treatment Court, and we have Sarah Hubbard here. I don't have a bio for Sarah, but Sarah's going to maybe introduce herself for us. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, yes. My name's Sarah Hubbard, and I'm one of the social worker therapists at the Toronto Drug Treatment Court, as well as currently the interim court liaison with the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto. I don't know if Jennifer wanted to introduce herself.
So I was just signing out of the last one and signing in. Hi, my name is Jennifer Lofft, and I am a Ontario Ministry of the Attorney General Assistant Crown Attorney for a really long time. I'm not going to disclose that, but I have been the only MAG Crown on the Toronto Drug Treatment Court since 2017. So that's coming up to 6 years. I work together with, of course, with the PPSC, and they have a roster of 4 crowns, including our team lead, who is Chris Green, who were the crown portion of the court. So do you just want us to start? We don't.
Let me say, sorry, Jennifer, I didn't see the, I had to take Robin off and put Sarah on, and I missed that there was a second party there. So I apologize for not introducing you, and welcome very much. And yes, please take it away.
Okay. So we're here to talk about the Toronto Drug Treatment Court, which is the first drug treatment court in the country. So we've had gone through a number of iterations since the first one, with Justice Paul Bentley at the helm, and a number of people, all of whom went on to become judges, or so many of them went on to become judges, and that includes, of course, His Honor Justice Kofi Barnes. It includes our own Andre Chamberlain, and now we have as our lead judge Justice Heather Pringle. Sarah Hubbard works as on the treatment team associated with CAMH, and she is the one who appears with us every week in court, and she also has a roster, or she has her own clients for whom she's the clinician. But just in terms of the subject matter for today, the how and why, I think we have a number of things about our court that are maybe different, like certainly different from what might be set up in Saskatchewan, or other parts of the country, where travel to a court is absolutely one of the challenges, and access to the court. But we have a lot of challenges because of our big city setting, and intense, I think, population, and very needy population. But I want to ask, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah for a moment to talk about the how and why, and really the I'm going to call it the evolving how and why of the Toronto Drug Treatment Court.
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. So I don't, it maybe makes sense to start with the why first, rather than the how. But Toronto Drug Treatment Court is, I think, unique for most courts in that we are strongly harm reduction based drug court, as opposed to an abstinence-based model. And the why of that is out of necessity. Here in Toronto, we, as a lot of other places are also experiencing, we're seeing, the effects of the opioid crisis, the toxicity of the drug supply. A lot of the drugs are poisoned with other substances that are unknown. So in terms of running an abstinence-based court, we're finding because of all of these issues, the individuals that are applying to our program and coming into the program and participating in the program have become much more complex and much sicker, unfortunately. So in terms of mental health wise, we're seeing a lot more individuals who are dealing with issues of psychosis, depression, some more severe mental health issues. I think, you know, from watching the individuals before us who've been through the program, the woman from Regina mentioned, you know, you can't help folks unless they're alive. And so that's sort of really our view that we've had to take here in Toronto, is that, you know, we have folks that are using very heavily. And our approach is to keep them alive in order to be able to help them in other ways. In terms of the how, I mean, how we run a harm reduction drug court here, we've, you know, I think we've sort of figured it out as the years have gone on, and particularly with the pandemic, that's sort of pushed it into over gear a little bit. But in terms of, you know, like, we provide naloxone kits, naloxone training immediately when people are released from custody. It's something that's addressed in our groups, at least on a monthly basis. We provide harm reduction supplies to all of our folks whenever they're here at CAMH. We also bring them to court for folks. You know, in terms of some of the more core aspects of the program, like urine drug screens, we're not asking for folks to leave screens in order to look for whether or not they're using substances. We frame it to participants in terms of it's an accountability and an honesty piece. So it's, you know, it's part of the program, but it's also just a part of accountability. We ask folks to report their use in court as well. So those things work the same, but for different reasons. We're not looking for abstinence. We're looking for honesty and connection. Also, you know, you know, the reason for harm reduction, there's a lot of different reasons, but one of them is that it opens a much wider sort of entry point for a lot of more folks to enter the program. Folks who are using heavily and are very much in active addiction, the idea of abstinence can be overwhelming. Treatment abstinence is not necessarily going to be on their mind at all, and so it kind of puts up a barrier to accessing treatment. So we sort of take that barrier away with the, you know, ideally the goal that folks will come to that sort of decision on their own, that abstinence may be what they want for their life. But we sort of allow that process to happen autonomously with the individual. We meet the client where they're at in terms of, you know, what are your goals and hopes for coming into this program? That's what I generally ask applicants that I am screening. I make very clear to them, we're not asking you to stop using substances. Abstinence is not a requirement for this program. You do, however, need to have some goals around reducing either your use or reducing the harm of your use. And so generally throw it out to the client of like, what are you hoping to get out of this? And answers that I usually hear are, you know, they can range from like, yeah, I want to stop using, to I want to stop overdosing every week. And so that's something we can like really tangibly help with. So yeah, a number of different reasons. And, you know, one thing we've had to do in order to sort of keep the harm reduction model is individualized treatment plans. So that's something that's become very big in our pandemic era, particularly, but it's something that's necessarily carried over into the present as well. Because again, folks, substance use is significantly higher, and that's for a number of reasons. These substances out there are stronger, more addictive. They require you to use more frequently to avoid getting sick. The substances they also contain other substances that are not expected, that can have mental health implications. So we really sort of individualize everyone's treatment plan in terms of group attendance, whether they're leaving screens on a color system or once a week, how many court attendances, things like that. I mean, currently we do still have a requirement that in order to officially graduate, it does require 3 months of no substance use. However, we do have another alternate category of successful completion. And this would be open to an individual who sort of meets all other requirements of, I think, sort of a standard drug treatment court, other than the abstinence piece, in terms of these individuals may look like somebody who is potentially using, on the weekend only. They're maintaining a job or volunteer or school, and their substance use is no longer, impacting that in any meaningful way. They've reconnected with family. Sort of all other aspects of their lives have drastically improved, and substance use isn't sort of meaningfully impacting that in any way at this point. We are also working towards looking at a sort of an alternative graduation status as well, to sort of integrate that harm reduction model even further into our grad.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And so that's sort of an outline of where we're going, and we're changing all the time. And if we can move to the barriers that we face in the Toronto Drug Treatment Court, which is of course related. It's almost the same as challenges, not quite. I kind of struggled with that at first. What's the difference between a barrier and a challenge? But definitely in terms of barriers, if I can speak to the barriers from the criminal justice side, I divided barriers into two categories: barriers to eligibility and barriers to application. So barriers to eligibility really focus on the charges that we can accept. And I want all of our partners to understand that it's not a simple matter, and because sometimes we are pushed sometimes by our treatment providers, Sarah, and by duty counsel Aspasia, to accept charges that aren't on the list of ordinarily eligible for drug treatment court. So we try to be open and flexible, but we still have we have to deal with policy which is formed actually at the federal level, and so there are layers of bureaucracy that are involved that we have to pay attention to. And not only that, but there's like the overlapping layer of provincial Crown policy as well that I, as the Crown, have to pay attention to. So violence is still a no for us. I'll temper that by saying serious violence, and we look at it contextually, as well as just like on the page. In other words, was this an offensive violence that may have been committed in what could be interpreted as a defensive way? And I'm thinking about a woman in an abusive relationship, for instance. I'm certainly always alive to that. But also like pushing away a security guard in the midst of a shoplift, a scuffle, further to an arrest, versus predatory violence. I would have to say, for us, predatory violence is a no. Generally, offenses that with weapons with a lot of criminal mental intent are a no. And a history of serious violence can be a barrier to eligibility as well. And that's not just because we as the Crown doesn't want to see, because we don't want to see someone who has a history of violence in our program. We also have to be mindful about all of the other participants in the program and how vulnerable that they might be to persuasion or even bad acts coming from people who have had demonstrated over a period of time a history of significant aggression. We know our therapists can handle it. We know that the court team can handle it, but in terms of the participants, they're entitled to feel safe in their groups and in court too, and so that's something that we take into account. Another current barrier to eligibility is the dropping number of charges. Now that sounds kind of weird because that doesn't sound like a barrier, right? Like, oh, well, isn't that good? No, in this sense, it means that because we in Toronto, they very rarely charge, the police very rarely charge possession anymore. And that's, that's again, the evolving policy around criminalization, not just of cannabis, but the sort of the appropriateness or the moral blameworthiness in criminalizing possession of drugs for drug users. So there are a lot of those charges that aren't being laid anymore. A lot of those folks would have been eligible for our program, but they're just simply not being charged. And so they're not entering the criminal justice system. So we have fewer of those to deal with. And the individuals who are charged with drug-related offenses, it tends to be the more serious offenses that cause more concern. Trafficking. Well, is it trafficking? Is it selling for use? Or how about look at all that other stuff? Is there a lot of money involved? Is there equipment? Are there multiple customers and things like that? So that definitely can be a barrier. Now, in terms of barriers to application, well, there are lots of those, and I've heard today quite a lot about some of those barriers. We do have difficulty identifying potential applicants and potential participants. We used to attend police divisions, do a significant amount of outreach at the detention centers, for instance. And I think Melissa Duck mentioned this as well, but people have to know about it at the institution. We have different, so now that throughout the pandemic, the institutions became really locked down, very difficult to penetrate for justice system stakeholders, let alone people who are sort of justice system adjacent, like social workers and so on. So we don't do any of that anymore. There's also difficulty communicating with potential applicants, and that is for duty counsel, defense lawyers, social workers. Most bail matters are now dealt with virtually, and that means that people are brought to court. And now, because of the transition to the new Toronto courthouse, where they've taken 6 courthouses, well, 4 have moved already, but the plan is 6 courthouses are merged together into one giant courthouse. And all of those 6 bail courts have gone up to North York, to 2201 Finch. So they've really separated out the bail matters from the rest of the system. And that is it's already causing us a lot of grief. And that's going to continue to cause us grief, because it's so important when Sarah talks about meeting people where they are, well, you have to meet them. Like, you have to actually meet them in order to determine, willingness to participate in the program, in order to, start off that therapeutic connection. Our people were in the court at Old City Hall twice a week, because we had court twice a week, and they could meet people in the cells twice a week. Just before the pandemic, our court was cut in half, and we were told, okay, you only get 1 day a week. It's only going to be once a week. And so that, we thought that was terrible. But then then the pandemic happened, and then the new courthouse happened, and we don't get them at all. The idea is they'll go to the bail center, and all of those difficulties with communication are in fact completely emphasized. Why does that matter? Because the access to not just a social worker who's associated with a drug treatment court, but also specialized duty counsel who would be available to explain the process of drug treatment court to sort of promising applicants or people who showed an interest. The pandemic happened to coincide with a protocol shift that happened to coincide with a policy shift. So all of that is making it very hard for us as we and to keep open the lines of communication that we need to operate as a program and as a team. Do you agree, Sarah?
Yeah, very much. I mean, there's a number of barriers that the new courthouse is posing at the moment, and likely will continue to pose. I mean, in terms of the bail center alone, it really sort of undercuts our harm reduction and safety policies for us, because when somebody gets out of custody, it's generally when they're at highest risk for overdose. Their tolerance, unless they're on opiate replacement, even if they are, a lot of folks are still using on top of opiate replacement before they go into custody. When they're released from custody, their tolerance is very, very low. As we've heard from other participants who previously graduated the program, often your first instinct is to go and use substances. One of the sort of main safety pieces for treatment is to meet individuals like as they are getting out of custody. Here's your naloxone. Do you need a refresher on how to use naloxone? Here, be reminded of the opioid overdose prevention strategies. Don't use alone. Do a test dose, like all of these sort of safety protocols. So a lot of the sort of higher up decisions that are being made are sort of not necessarily taking into account the ground level functioning of DTC and just sort of basic safety, keeping people alive and with us, for sure.
And that's, I mean, as I said earlier, I thought it was, barriers and challenges are so closely related, because these are, barriers to eligibility, barriers to even being able to apply, then turn into challenges in keeping it going. So, and when you remove, when you take away a lot of the things that we've been relying on, one of them being a structure that it is very hard to get used to for most of our participants, I have to say. And we have noticed that when a therapist leaves, for instance, whether to take on another job or maternity leave, that's a period of transition. And there has to be a readjustment to everything that goes along, and because everything is happening right now kind of at the same time, and we're just not sure exactly, honestly, where exactly it's coming from, this push for it's a policy shift to broaden the expertise of judges, crowns, duty counsel in the system, and the idea behind it is that everybody should be able to do everything. But what is going to be a challenge for us is to maintain our program in the face of this. Like, how do we, when we know how difficult it is to change anything? So we're going to be moving to the new courthouse. So that's a big challenge. Okay, and our first drug treatment court in the new courthouse is going to be Tuesday, the first Tuesday in May. So that's going to be, or the first Tuesday in, what is it? Anyway, I probably have like a big black mark in my book. But we're out of Old City Hall on May the 28th, and on May the 30th, we'll be at the new Toronto courthouse. Okay, and there's a beautiful new courtroom that is like all new and swishy and everything, but the pieces that really make a team are still a little bit up in the air, and we're concerned about that. And I think it goes without saying that because of bail courts being hived out of the regular court, and we still have our bail court at Old City Hall right now, but we're going to lose that with the move to the new courthouse at the end of May. People will be spending more time in jail, and in circumstances where they are probably at risk. So we will be looking for ways to deal with that. We will be looking for ways to open the communication. We're looking for ways to maintain consistency in the context of the new landscape. I think that's going to be hard. Another thing that is a challenge from a justice perspective is the overwhelming backlog that that COVID brought about. And I know in the last panel they said, well, that's one good thing that came out of COVID, and it's true, because the the capacity to have virtual courts has made some of what we do better and more available and more accessible. But on the other hand, I think we all know what happened at the onset of the pandemic. First, Toronto Drug Treatment Court, it was lucky because we got going long before most of the other drug treatment courts in the province. And I don't know about the rest of the country, but at first it was completely canceled for months. And we were kind of operating on an ad hoc basis on the phone. It's almost impossible to believe, but there we were, like, on the phone from police divisions, cobbling together the team, basically doing what we had to make this happen. And then we started court again once a week instead of our what had been before twice a week. And there was a massive adjustment required, and that's going to be that's going to continue to be the case. But because of the justice backlog, there's been a lot of there's been a huge push to get charges out of the system. So that means that a lot of people who might have been eligible before and interested and maybe great participants and maybe have a chance at stopping the turnstile of offending aren't coming to us because they're getting kind of screened out or hived off before they even have a chance to think about it. And that as a court for primarily non-violent property offenders, well, those are the first charges to go, right? So those are getting kind of dealt with in other ways, and so the incentive to participate in drug treatment court, I think, isn't what it once was. It's hard. Drug treatment court is hard. It's a lot of work, and as it must be, because sometimes I think that people forget what the ultimate goal is. Of course, the ultimate goal is to improve, for people to recover their lives. But from a justice, from a Crown perspective, is to stop the cycle of offending. And there's just been a lot of turnstiling that's been going on. Multiple releases, very little changing, and some of those people would have been good participants for drug treatment court, but we've had no way to kind of engage them, and also maybe no reason for them to be engaged because they're just released again, and and non-custodial sentences focus on getting people out of jail, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. So that continues to be challenging for us. Like, people sitting out there wondering, is it worth it? This is a lot.
And from a treatment perspective, sort of a lot of the things that Jennifer touched on, particularly around the new sort of model that's going to be implemented in the new courthouse of sort of not having specialty crowns or necessarily a dedicated drug treatment court team in terms of the court side of things. From a treatment perspective, that's pretty concerning for us. Folks know that who are involved in drug treatment courts, one of the sort of main best practices, core principles, is having that continuity for participants for a number of reasons. And one is just it's just basic trauma informed care, to have sort of the same continuity of individuals. Clients that come into this program have enormous trauma histories, have a tremendous amount of difficulty sort of trusting authority figures, often for very legitimate reasons. They have, traumatic experiences in court with legal professionals. Some clients, some things that have been said to them by judges in court have sort of shaped years of their life. They've internalized these words. So, not having a dedicated team who knows the participants, who is trained in drug treatment court and trauma-informed care, I think it's going to be a significant barrier coming up in terms of having our clients being able to trust coming to court. They, it's one thing to trust the treatment team, and the way it's been is, come to court. It's a special kind of court. These folks really care about you. It's going to be a different experience. But we won't really be able to sort of promise that anymore if it's going to be sort of a rotating. Like, I, as the court liaison, may not know who the Crown will be that week. They may not know any of our participants, or they may have not been in drug treatment court for several weeks or months, have no idea sort of the continuity of what's been going on in somebody's life, their circumstances. And for a lot of folks, all it takes is a look or a tone of voice that's appears to be threatening, even though it may not have any intent in terms of the judge or the Crown that is speaking. Our folks can be sort of very emotionally intuitive, and they can sort of perceive when a judge or a Crown who's speaking to them is actually invested in them, if they actually care about what's going on, versus somebody who's sort of, yep, next, please tell me about use, next. And those experiences can actually be very traumatic for folks. And my concern is that this will pose a big barrier in terms of having people return to court and ultimately stay in the program.
Yeah, Aspasia, are you there? I see you on my screen. I'm just wondering if you're actually there, and if you, because I'm pretty sure that from a defense perspective, because we don't have defense represented on our panel right now, but I'm very concerned about duty counsel in particular, who develop a really important and consistent relationship with the participants, to the extent that even when duty counsel, like the few duty counsel that there are who are trained, when they move off to another cycle, some of the participants will go back to that duty counsel for the final advice, and that duty counsel will appear on the final sentencing or at graduation, and it's just it could represent the loss of a really important cohesiveness on the team. And together with, we've talked a little bit about confidential information as well, but because there is a lot of our participants have had traumatic histories, of course, as Nicoletta said, probably all of them. And there's a limited number of people that they should have to share that information with. So that is also a concern. So it sort of has the prospect of becoming a little bit more of an arm's length justice system situation from the court team, like Crown and Defense, and that is definitely of concern to us. But that's depressing. So just turning to the successes, and I think folks who are listening to the presentations today must be, I'm so proud that two of our recent graduates, Nicoletta Curson and Melissa Duck, appeared on the panel before, and that's really all I need to say about successes, and just really is a fantastic thing, and they've both done so well, and it's just it just is exactly what can happen with the with drug treatment court. It's mind-blowing, really. It's incredible.
Yeah, from a treatment perspective, I mean, it's always great to hear our grads go on and speak about their experiences and just kind of share with everyone how well they're doing, because this program is a tremendous amount of work. We're basically asking folks to change their entire lives, their way of being in the world, their way of thinking about themselves and others. It's a complete overhaul, and it's not easy. Sort of listening to some of our previous grads talking about successes and best practices. I sort of have my own list of success and best practice in my head of sort of what we're doing right in the program. But it was nice to hear some of that echoed back to us in terms of, like our as Melissa had mentioned, I think, our slogan here is stay connected. We even joke it's, DTC for life. Our main sort of underlying tenet of this program is connection and community. It's a sense of community. So folks, are never, when folks get anxious about graduating, we tell them, this nothing will change except you don't have to go to court anymore. If you want to come to groups, you can come to group. If you want to see your therapist, you can see your therapist. You're welcome anytime. So that connection piece, and I think one way we're able to do that connection piece so well initially is we sort of operate we're very fortunate to have a lot of resources, both being here in Toronto, being with CAMH, and as well as having sort of private not-for-profit agencies that provide funding and different things, that we're able to provide like a one-stop shop for folks. So they come out of custody, they come see us at CAMH. Are you hungry? Do you need food? Do you need clothing? Do you need a winter coat or winter boots? It's been snowing since you went into custody. Are you on OW or ODSP? Let's get that done today so you can have some money in your pocket. Do you need issues with housing? We have housing partnerships both for temporary transitional housing as well as permanent supportive housing. So we built those partnerships. So sort of all the social determinants of health that make for a success, and really help folks sort of get on their way. We have built those connections over the years to be able to provide a lot of that. And so I think we also have an amazing peer support worker who is able to greet folks when they come into the program. And so people really feel welcome here. One of the things that sort of I find kind of points to we're on the right track is that when we have folks that are even expelled from the program, let's say they brought in ineligible charges and had to exit and be sentenced outside, we have those folks come back to us. They serve their sentence and they go back to the regular system, and as soon as they're discharged, hey guys, I'm out. We provide them a meal, clothes. So seeing the folks who were quote unquote not successful in the program still stay connected to us is a big indicator for us that we've sort of been successful in our endeavor in at least some ways of addressing some of those social determinants of health.
Well, and we're sort of learning, and everybody's learning all the time, but we're learning about different measures of success too. And a really important measure of success from the prosecutor's perspective, not the human perspective, but I'm also a prosecutor, is no more charges, like no more charges. The offending stops. It takes time. And this is something that, and I know Nicoletta talked about that too. And from that initial period where there can be a lot of reluctance, and but the sort of prospect of getting out of jail is strong. Like the extrinsic motivator is getting out of jail at the beginning, but then the idea is that it changes over time. And then if the offending stops, as far as I'm concerned, that's the prosecution's success. And we currently have, the graduation is also a sentencing where we deal with the formal sentencing of the charges. And I find that it often seems so strange to be talking about the criminal conduct when the person who's standing before us as a graduate bears very little resemblance to the person who was arrested and charged with those offenses. So that's something that we might want to think about down the line, and sort of moving on to sort of best practices and recommendations. Like, do we want to separate that and maybe not have the sentencing as part of the graduation, because it seems odd, and kind of, it's a reminder of how far a participant has come. But I think we're coming to the end of our time, Sarah, but my my final message, and then I'm going to let you have a final word, is something that I've heard over and over again during the presentations today and yesterday, and certainly in the literature, and even in my own practice, which is, as I said, been for many, many years, the importance of consistency. And so that's what we are hoping for in this time of great transition.
Yeah, and just, you know, in terms of treatments perspective, I'm always going to be putting a plug in for harm reduction programs. I know it's sort of a politically charged topic, especially these days. But you know, it's a big adjustment to make, especially when you're coming from a criminal justice point of view and an abstinence-based models. And you know, you've got a lot of folks who are very interested in 12-step programming, and that's absolutely great. But some folks really need harm reduction in order to stay alive. And that's sort of the population group that we are seeing here in Toronto. And I'm just really pleased and proud that we've been able to make that work to the best of our abilities. And we're continuing to try to better our best practices.
And I just took a peek at the questions, and I see that a question someone asked about probation. Yes, we have a dedicated probation officer. That's a really important part of our court team, and again, consistency, and who develops generally a really close relationship with participants. Helps a lot, because many people come in on probation and all of them leave on probation. So it's really important.
I do see a question here saying, being such a large population you're dealing with, does your DTC have any experience with individuals with developmental disabilities? If so, do you find there are different methods of success with these participants? Absolutely. And you know, we do have some individuals with significant development disabilities, and it's been an enormous challenge. It's something that we've seen in treatment is actually an enormous gap in the system in terms of individuals with developmental disabilities and the justice system. They don't quite fit into sort of any of the therapeutic courts or you know, alternatives, and yet they need that support. We've had to, this is sort of where our individualized treatment plans have really been helpful. And we've been lucky to have a dedicated court team who cares about our participants and was willing to sort of work with us and work with the individual to find a solution that, you know, didn't look like a typical success. But, you know, the person was, you know, this individual I'm thinking of has been housed for the first time in his entire adult life. He has multiple supports, although the individual maybe not in the program anymore, you know, they continue to seek support from us. But yes, it's an enormous gap that we've personally, that treatment has identified, that there doesn't even just be a lot of research on sort of developmental disabilities and the justice system. So hopefully something for future. And do you allow clients to keep attending if they don't graduate or out of the program? Yes, absolutely. So again, it's sort of, you know, our motto is connection. One might think that, you know, that becomes an untenable situation if you're from a treatment perspective. Yes, our sort of unofficial caseloads can get quite large, but that's sort of one of our core tenets of this program is stay connected. If you need support, we are here. I think it really depends on the individual in terms of allowing them back to groups. It's sort of a one-on-one basis. Depending on the circumstances of their exit and different things like that. But generally, to the best of our ability, while keeping our participants safe and comfortable, we do try to welcome back folks who have exited in a non-graduation way and keep supporting them individually in the community or through individual counseling if need be.
Okay.
Two more questions, I think.
Two more questions? Okay.
Does the court ever make detox orders?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we formally call them detox orders, but yes, we have made going to detox a condition of continuing to participate in the program. It's like it's tricky area, but that's kind of how we do it, and we rely heavily on treatment to kind of put it in a way that makes it seem irresistible. Going to detox, like
Yes, I
the
mean, if we're,
alternative might be bail revocation, for instance. Something
yeah, I
that
mean, if
we
we
dealt
see
with today.
individuals, yeah, who are struggling and they are looking at sanctions, treatment may recommend, you know, why don't we propose to this individual that, you know, attending detox won't hurt their situation in terms of sanctions. But I don't think, not in the recent years anyway, have we had people formally, you know, ordered or mandated to attend detox.
And then I think
And
we've another question about coming. Anyone who has ever once been, yes, anyone can, yes, please come back.
so from the treatment perspective,
Yeah.
yes, it's not that they are formally brought back into the program.
Right,
It's not
right.
like a legal revolving door of anyone who's ever been here. That being said, you know, we do have folks who were with us, like a lot of our individuals are with us for years in this program. And so we have folks that exited the program 10 years ago who show up and they want to see their therapist from 10 years ago. Hey, I wanted to show you I'm doing really well now. Or, hey, I'm really struggling. I haven't, you know, been here, seen you folks in 4 years, but I'm wondering if you could help me do a residential treatment application. So it's not like we take them back fully into the program and they're allowed to do groups and all of that, but we do what we can in terms of how can we help? Can we get you connected to a residential treatment application? Can we, you know, what can we do in terms of helping support you sort of in the program, but not in the program?
And I mean, we have had people apply for a second time as well, who've been through the program and they come in again. That's happened too. So it's not a bar to participating again if you need it.
I think it's just a last comment. It would be very helpful if the respective teams could shadow each other on the job. That's a great idea. This way they will get a better understanding of the challenges, difficulties, and strengths possible to get a better multidisciplinary support for clients. I mean, I'm lucky enough as the court liaison to actually have that opportunity to some extent, because I do sort of participate in the court meetings, and I'm there in court weekly. But it would be very interesting to have a member of the court team shadow the treatment team. Might cause some ethical and confidentiality issues, being that we do try to sort of keep, from treatment's perspective, sanctions never come from us. Sanctions come from the court team. So we can sort of use them as our bad guy when needed in terms of external motivation. So we do try to keep clear those boundaries of treatment's here for you. The court team cares, and you know, they have their mandates as well. So it might get complicated, but it would be very interesting to try.
Great idea. Our time is up.
Sarah and Jennifer, can I thank you very much for an incredible show of what the Toronto Drug Treatment Court's all about, and life downtown Toronto for my peers and you guys in your wonderful professions. Jennifer said the words mind-blowing and incredible, and that says a lot about what Jennifer was presenting today in her heart and soul about the drug treatment program. And Sarah said connections and community, and that goes to relationship and healing and the treatment that you guys are doing. I was there 40 years ago, going to the old Toronto court, the City Hal court, and I overdosed at the end of my 8 years on the streets of Toronto, and Addiction Research Foundation. So CAMH is building there. They had a crash unit that was designed to help keep overdoses alive. And they kept me alive, and that was my partner died. I got home to and sound, and I've been making it, you know. 30 years of sobriety and 40 years because of super counselors that you guys have passed me off to. And it was a blind counselor from Addiction Research Foundation that treated me on the streets that I got to see. So you guys are keeping up the great work of a lot of warriors from the past. And thank you so much for being here today and doing what you're doing out there in the field.
You're welcome. My pleasure. And a major shout out to Sarah Hubbard for participating in the panel with 4 hours of notice. Maybe 3. I don't know. Not a lot. Anyway, thank you, Sarah.
My pleasure. It's
I knew
always
she'd
my
do a
pleasure
great
to
job.
speak about this program and our folks that work so hard. Yeah.
You did fantastic. For anybody that wants to see the next presentation, if you go to your link this morning that you were sent, it will have a special link for the 3:40 presentation this afternoon. It's a pre-recorded presentation. Everybody have a great, wonderful rest of your day, and thank you very much for participating.